tracked it. And what we saw is in late summer of this last year, September, November, December, all of a sudden there was a huge spike in those crimes. At that point, we pulled out all the stops. We put a task force together at the precinct. I dedicated a 2-officer car, both day and night shift. That is all they did. They didn't handle police calls. Their sole job was to drive around in those hot spots areas and try to prevent those crimes and or try to identify suspects and catch people. In addition to that, our anti-crime team, our gang unit, the traffic section, King County Metro Transit, and Light Rail Police were all involved in that operation. Behind the scenes, you had burglary detectives and juvenile detectives at my precinct, as well as our robbery detectives downtown, working collaboratively to get to the bottom of this and start identifying suspects, which they have done. And in the last 3 weeks to a month, they have identified 3 separate groups of criminals who have been doing these crimes. These groups are a mix of young to older juveniles and young adults. They are all affiliated with local gangs, every one of them, and they are very sophisticated. The MO was to put a spotter on a bus or a light rail. This individual would find a target, someone who had electronic devices, laptop, iPad, cell phone, somebody that wanted it would look like they'd be an easy mark. And then once that person got off the bus or the light rail and started walking home, they picked a spot. Meanwhile, they had a tail car of 2 of their comrades following on those bus and light rail routes, and they were there as extra muscle if they were needed, or they were there as the escape car. So this was all uncovered in the last 2 or 3 weeks, while we arrested 3 of these crews. One group, believe it or not, was as young as 14 was their ringleader. Other juveniles have been identified and are being arrested along with him. There was another group that was 1 young adult and 4 juveniles that were preying on people. They have all been identified and arrested. And there was another individual, 17-year-old, with a mix of adults and young same-age juveniles. The 17-year-old is going to be tried as an adult. So we've made huge gains in those investigations and continue to do so. They're not all rounded up. We know there's still some more out there. But as we investigate these cases, we are identifying more and more of these suspects and putting them away. A large part of this effort is the men and women at the precinct working collaboratively with our detectives and especially King County Metro Transit and Light Rail. They've all been working extremely well together and really have done a lot of work to bring this investigation to the point where it's at. And they deserve a lot of credit. Burglaries. About the same time I started noticing these trends involving the robberies, at the same time, September, October, November, and December, we started seeing the bell curve go up with residential burglaries in this neighborhood and other places throughout southeast Seattle. It was like clockwork. And generally, this neighborhood, which is basically in our district speak, is Robert 1 and Robert 3. Your mean level, average level of burglaries for the last 10 years has been about 10 to 15 a month. That's your average. So October, November, you went up to 30 a month. It doubled. You're back down to around 12, 14. So we've got a handle on it. We can always do better, but the crime spree appears to be over.
Not.
Compared to where it was for 2 months. The good news is this, and this, folks, what I'm about to tell you is unheard of. I've never seen this in my 28 years of police. I can't say enough about our patrol officers and our decentralized burglary and juvenile detectives at the South Precinct. In the last 3 to 4 weeks, they have identified and are in the process of arresting 27 burglary suspects. 27. 6 of which are responsible for burglaries in your neighborhood. How do we catch burglars? 3 ways. 9 of those 27, basically a third of them, were the good work patrol officers lifting prints. They were from print hits. That's how they were identified. The others is just people telling on each other in the criminal world, and the other part is neighbors actually calling in when they see something suspicious in their neighborhood, specifically someone going from door to door, going around the backyard, and we've caught them in the act. So that is huge. That is a huge gain in our burglaries, and I fully expect to see them go down even further from where they are with that many people that have been identified in the process of being arrested. So that being said, let me talk about the MO, or what we see there. What we see there is someone going from door to door. Lately, the newest trend is that it's been a young woman. But it doesn't always have to be a young woman, but lately we've seen more and more of that. It can be a man, it can be an older person. But they go up to your door with some ridiculous excuses. So-and-so here, you want to buy this, da-da-da-da-da. It doesn't make sense. They have no business being there. They're casing your home. They're just seeing if somebody answers the door. If no one answers the door, they're going to go around back, they're going to break a window, and they're going to get into your house. Guess what they're looking for? Electronics and jewelry. Price of gold right now, jewelry. So a couple of tips here, folks. If you don't have a really good safe in your house, do not keep your expensive jewelry in your jewelry cabinet or your drawers that you would normally keep it. Hide it somewhere in a cereal box in the back of your pantry or something like that you're not going to look for. You know, don't use that one because criminals watch 21-2 to figure out good okay? Figure out a good place. But don't keep it where you normally keep your jewelry, okay? So, you know, on that note, one of the ways we catch burglars is community members, and we've caught several this way recently, seeing that person going from door to door and calling 911. That's a high priority call for us, and we want to get there and intervene in that. So, huge gains in the burglary investigations. As far as light rail, and this came up the other night at a community meeting, you definitely want to keep your electronics in your backpack, in your pocket. You don't want to be using them, texting and looking at videos and things like that on the bus, because now you're advertising to people that you have stuff they want. If you get a bad heebie-jeebie feeling from someone on a bus that might be casing you, and you're feeling like if you get off at this stop, they're going to follow you and you're worried, don't get off. Get on your cell phone, call a friend, call 911, make sure you're getting off where there's support and someone there to meet you, or a business that's open or something like that. The next phase is this. We all know that, well, my detectives and I and all of the people that have been working on this, bad guys take stolen property somewhere. So we are up and running and working on those investigations on where this stuff is being fenced, what's being done with it, and who are the people that are buying this stuff. So that is something we are working on collaboratively with other detective units, and we expect to see some huge gains in those investigations. With that, I'd like to turn it over to John Hayes just for a few minutes to talk about a few things we're doing in all of the communities throughout South Seattle to help you with a lot of these problems. And then we'll open it up to questions. Thank you.
2 days before I start, great job, Kevin, great job. 2 days before I start, I want to give a shout out to Nick Licata over here at City Council. And also, our own deputy mayor is here, Daryl Smith, a member of the community, a member that's been involved with you for countless years. Daryl, can you take us into the please?
Thank you very much. Lakewood Seward Park, it is really great to be here. This is powerful and this is really important. Many of you are friends and neighbors and old real estate clients. I see all you out there. We care a lot about crime and the uptick of crime across all neighborhoods, but you know, obviously for me this may be a little bit more personal. I live right over the hill. My mom lives right down the road off of Seward Park Avenue. And this morning Chief Diaz was in my office explaining to me about some of the changes that are going to be instituted here, but the most important thing, and I think Captain Nolan hit on it, is We're a stronger community when we're connected to one another, so if you don't get Marge Veronica's email list, you need to get on that list. You need to hear from Pat at Crime Prevention. You need to be active with your chamber, with your business association, whether it's Columbia City or Rainier Beach Merchants. The more we talk to one another, the more we partner with the great South District Precinct. And I have to tell you, I started working with Nick Metz a long time ago during the first beat walk. We've got really great people in the South District. Partner with them and we can all be safer as a result of that work. Thank you. I'm here to listen.
Thank you very much. Couple things before we get started. Do realize some very important points were made that I do not want you to overlook. Chief Diaz mentioned something that's extremely important and is vital to how he operates from the top of the command staff level right on down to the officers that are working in your district. Because he firmly believes in fighting crime. There is no doubt about that. That's an important part of how he operates and thinks, but also reducing the fear of crime. And what that translated to with Captain Nolan in particular was that we were going to address issues including our customer service to you as a community coming into the South, for those of you that are living here in the South Precinct, and also that last area of building communities, which are extremely important to us, especially now that things are changing in a more positive direction. Captain Nolan felt very strong that those two areas are the areas that he had the biggest impact on, and also with Chief Diaz being able to tie in some of the added resources, and also with Deputy Chief Metz being able to bring in those additional resources to the precinct to help us out. So we're really appreciative of that fact. But there's also another area that's important to us that we have been doing, and that is how our outreach has been operating in the precinct over the last couple of months. We've used community walks to be able to get a message out to everyone watching, that you never gave up the streets out there. Those are your streets and that is your community, and we are going to all work together to make sure that message is well known to anyone that comes in here that decides that they want to try and do a crime. We're going to find you and we're going to get you and we're going to hold you accountable. And we have individuals in this community that are mapping that out daily, sometimes hourly, to make sure that we find out who's doing it. So when we do our community walks, we talk about personal safety issues. How do you become aware? How do you know what's going on around you? And how do we drop our guard sometimes? We use CEPTED, community policing through environmental design, meaning we're looking at each little place and saying, oh, is this a safe area? Could a bad person hide out in this particular area? And what do we need to do to make improvements? Whether we do it in a residential community or we do it out there around our businesses that we need to continue to support that are here. We also have to let everyone know that, what is needed. What is needed from you? We need your participation not only on the walks, but to participate in making changes in the community, whether it comes to reporting lighting, streets that are unsafe, sidewalks that are unsafe so people can't get around. And we also are looking at teaching you how to be great witnesses. We want you to be able to identify a situation, know that you have control over what you're observing, and being able to tell an officer as they're taking the report who is that individual, what they look like, a description, maybe how they've gotten away, or even what the vehicle may look like that that individual may be involved with. The next part, another mandatory element of what Captain Nolan is bringing to the precinct. He's saying, John, we're going to sit down, we're going to listen to what each person has to tell us about the community. We're looking at ways that we can learn better on how we can do customer service. So one of the things that happen, and I'll tell you, we learn by our mistakes and we try to make as few as possible. In fact, we have an assistant chief, Sanford, that's right outside, and he says, we can't afford to get it right 99% of the time. We have to get it right 100% of the time, and that's what we're striving to do each and every day. So one of the things that came to mind for us was the fact that we took a long time getting to a call. we not only apologize to the family of getting late to take a burglary report, but how we're fixing that, and we're trying it just in the South Precinct right now. But what we're doing is we're having someone monitor the calls and work with radio so that if a call is delayed over a certain period of time, if a call is delayed, we're giving a call back to that house to let them know, we have not forgotten about you. Is it still convenient to come by, or what's another time where we can come by, and just to make sure that not only we get the report, but to let them know we haven't forgot about them, and especially since they have other things that they're doing. We're putting also information out to the community about the arrests that we're making. It was surprising. We had tremendous feedback when we started putting out an announcement of the number of officers that were involved with arrests that took place in the community, and to let the community know, sir, so-and-so was arrested, this is what it took to do it, and to give a shout out to those officers that are out there in your community day in and day out, to let them know that they are appreciated. And the feedback that we received was tremendous. In fact, one individual wrote us back and told us, this is an email that's representing 320 individuals that are saying thank you to those officers that helped catch the bad guy. The last part is, what we're really trying to do is surround ourselves with individuals that are not only caring about their community, but have very good programs or ideas of networking. We want you to get to know who is in your community, the neighbors that care about each other. And so we're trying to put together information pieces. Our outreach unit is actually doing visits within people's homes to talk about some of the things that we're doing that are trying to make your community safer. So we're doing in-home discussion, roundtables with you, and we're getting some of those ideas and implementing them as well. Probably our last area of biggest concern, and probably the hardest area for us, is the area around mental health issues. Individuals that are in our community that have very serious needs. Sometimes the families know what those needs are. And we can be of assistance, and this is before a crime is committed, where we want to provide a service that is helpful and supportive. So with all of those things that are said, that's a little bit of what's going on now. And I believe, Captain, we're going to take a few of the questions now. And is that fair? Yeah. Is that right? Okay. I have to meet with a bigger committee on that one, okay? And so what we would really appreciate is be very specific about the question, please. And realize a lot of effort is going into how we do outreach, customer service, and our arrests as well.
And real quick, before we get to questions, John's going to be scheduling a community safety walk in this neighborhood very soon. So those of you who are interested, get with Jeannie, but we're going to get going on that. You were on the list to get that done here anyway. We're just going from one community to the other to do those. So let's get started, ma'am. Whoop. Okay. Go ahead. What? I'm sorry. Ma'am, here with me. We'll get you.
bold burglary because those people not only left smoke, they smoked in my house. They yanked the smoking alarm that's probably went on. They left bottles of sports drinks, type of Gatorade, type of things like that. And they completely ransacked the house. I mean, first floor, second floor, my kid's bedroom, pillowcases, missing. I didn't understand what was the reason, but then when the officer came in.
I'll repeat what people are asking, kind of condense it so you can hear the question.
I mean, for me personally, not only having that robbery, this, I mean, obviously, we get in the house and it's they're not there, but it's the aftermath that's dealing with the whole thing. you know, obviously don't feel comfortable because the kids now they're really always on the, you know, I mean, I'm not comfortable in this house to the point that I could think putting it for rent or lease or something, but what I mean is,
Can you not pass the mic?
Oh, we can do that. It only reaches 9 feet.
Yeah, it's
a short line.
I made the list.
Guys.
But my question is, how do we get an update from the police? You know, so far,
Okay.
I just simply been dealing with the insurance, and so far,
Right.
the only person that has been investigated, and I found this absolutely outrageous, is the insurance.
Okay. I got the gist of your
And
question.
tells you, we can investigate you, we can do a criminal background on you, have you filed for bankruptcy?
Okay, all right, folks. Anyway, the gist of the question was, she was recently burglarized, house was ransacked, you know, and officers came, investigated, now she's dealing with the insurance company. And the bottom line to your question, and I'm gonna offer something to you as well. Bottom line to your question is you call Sergeant Steve Damon at the South Precinct, he's my detective sergeant supervisor, and he can give you the update of your investigation. You can get his number from Sergeant Martin or any of us here after the meeting. The other thing I want to do is hook you up with Mark Solomon, a crime prevention coordinator, who can come out and do a home visit at your house and help you shore things up as far as making it a little harder for burglars to get into. And he's happy to do that as part of the service the city provides. Back here, I had somebody.
So could you ask for a show of hands, how many people have been burglarized? There you go.
Okay. Okay. Gentlemen wanted to show of hands of how many people have been burglarized. Okay? Yeah. Now, how many have you been burglarized at your home? We're not talking about your car. Okay, your home has been broken into. Okay. How many in the last 6 months? How many in the last year? Okay. Okay. How many more than once? Okay. Obviously, there's a crime problem. That's why we're here. You bet. Okay. Ma'am.
Hi, I'm not sure if this fits right now, but at some point I would really like an update on the sexual assault violence that has occurred in this community as well. Seward Park obviously has been a site where sexual violence has occurred. This is a broad range of ages who have been attacked in the last year in this neighborhood up on Beacon Hill and around. So I don't know if we want to get into it now, but I just wanted to introduce that as another community issue.
That's the question. Those are being investigated by our sexual assault investigative unit. I know there was a couple near the I-90 lid about a year ago. We had a meeting down on Lake Washington on that. I believe the suspect was identified in one of them. The other investigations are ongoing, and I have not heard the status of those.
Could I make a suggestion that,
It depends on how much the follow-up detective unit is willing to give out. They have to be careful not to compromise the investigation if they have specific information. But when they do arrest somebody and the case is cleared, we try to get that information out to you. So far, that really hasn't. Chief?
Can we recommend, Mike, if people want to come up and ask a question, if they can just come up and use the microphone?
That's going to be hard in this.
That's impossible.
I mean, you know, if people could just yell.
They can't move, and I'm like, that's gonna be a problem.
We can try that. Yeah, well, that's what I've been trying to do. Ma'am?
You haven't addressed stolen cars. We've had 2 cars stolen off our lot alone in the last 2 months. Is this an anomaly, or is this
No.
No, it's not.
Seward Park issue?
And the question is stolen cars, and yes, this neighborhood has been hit extremely hard with auto theft. We have been working on that. We have a bait car that we get from the insurance companies that we put out in several neighborhoods. So far, bad guys have not taken the bait. However, we continue to do so, and we adjust our patrol staffing to actually do emphasis patrols in neighborhoods we know there is a lot of auto thefts. Our auto theft detectives are working on that. We are recovering some of the cars. Some of that investigation I can't really go into right now, but you bet.
If I could just finish up on the auto theft, and one of the things I wanted to talk about is that about 6 years ago, we were, the city was averaging about 9,000 cars a year being stolen. It was very high for a city that generally doesn't have that kind of a crime rate. So with the help of the King County Prosecutor's Office, in fact, Mike Nolan was involved in this earlier, we switched what we were doing. Instead of trying to look at every single one of them, we were trying to go for the serial offender, and we just started going through the top 20 list by just focusing on the on some of these auto thieves, which was amazing. There were some of them were good for 30, 40, 50 auto thefts that we know of. Sometimes they forgot how many they stole. We reduced it, and it's still, well, to me, one is too many, but we're at, last year I think we're at about 28 to 3,000. So we reduced it by 6,000 cars, and that was by focusing on serial offender. It's the same thing that we're doing with the burglars. Is, you know, when you look at the 27 that were arrested, you have to look at how many each one of those is good for. And for some of these, this is their way of life, so they're doing multiple ones.
Thanks, and keep in mind, part of it's me triaging priorities. The first priority with these serial robberies on the street where people were getting beaten and their stuff taken from them, that was my highest priority. We're getting a handle on that. Residential burglary was my other highest priority. Not that auto theft isn't, but it had to go down on the rung of priority as far as where I was going to put all of my resources to get a handle on something, because generally that's taken in the middle of the night, you're nowhere around it. It's the stuff that was affecting people's personal safety is what I wanted to get a handle on first. Not, we've forgotten about auto theft, it's still a high priority, but part of this is kind of prioritizing and triage. Okay, ma'am.
Where are these arrest lists that you mentioned earlier that we could look and see who gets arrested and how often?
Well, some of that we're in the process of getting out. Some of it we can't tell you, because if they're juveniles, you don't get to know their name and you get to know very little. There's laws protecting juveniles, and I would say 70% of the people we are arresting are juveniles. So unfortunately, you're not going to get a whole lot other than we did arrest somebody. Some of it has to do when the prosecutor okays us getting information out, but we're in the process of doing that. We're getting it out in community newsletters. Absolutely. Moving around the room now.
How is the police department connecting communities? You say that community is so important. I am from Lockmore. My name is Alexis Gallegos. We're up on Beacon. We're parallel to your community here in Seward. We've had the exact same questions that you guys all have, but we're trying to learn how to connect community, and I want to know how the police department is handling that. We're supposed to have a walk tonight up at Lockmore, and we've Lockmore neighbors have said, the Seward neighbors, we're going to have this talk tonight. We're having a walk tomorrow to encourage safety in our neighborhood. We invite you all to come to ours as well.
Okay.
What is the police doing to help us?
The question is, what is the police doing to help connect neighborhoods? And that's where John Hayes comes in. And we're just getting started on a lot of that. One of the issues we're seeing is there's a lot of separate social networking going on in every single community. And they're not necessarily tied in with each other. Some are, some aren't. There's so much of it going on, we have a hard time keeping track of who's doing what. So that's something that issue in time will get worked out, and ideally we'll have something set up on the police department that when we put something out, it goes to all of them. Okay, that's the end idea of what we'd like to get to. There's also some new technologies coming online that we're looking at that will help with that, but that's kind of a work in progress. We'll eventually get there. Is there anything?
Great question. Tomorrow night I'll be at the North Beacon Hill Council meeting up on Beacon Hill to talk about some of these very same issues for Beacon Hill folks. There's a couple of other resources I want to mention as well. Ed Potter's is here from our Neighborhood District Coordinator South team in terms of connecting communities that are facing similar challenges or celebrations or whatever. Ed is a great guy to know who can connect you directly with things that are going on in the city and make sure that we're talking to each other very well. I also neglected to mention, I have here with me Carl Marquardt from the Mayor's Office, who works on public safety issues, and James Bush, speaking of connecting. James works on our outreach and civic engagement team. They're great people to get to know as well.
Thank you. Sir, been very patient with being in your arms. Go ahead.
My question is actually for the executive side, because when the police have resources, this stuff actually gets taken care of. When you're giving a list of I live down in 40th and Kenyon, so some of the crime we're dealing with down there is a little different. It's more like the woman who was assaulted at 10:30 in the morning in the Safeway parking lot. That's the safe way to exploit my child. My daughter and I go to. we go there during the day. And I guess the crime has gotten increased and become more violent since about September. So what's actually changed since September? And what is the council members, what's Councilmember Harold's in charge of public safety now? What are the other council members, what's the mayor's office doing to address the issues that cause this type of crime? The police do a great job of after the crime's been committed, but how do we prevent that assault from happening in the first place?
By the way, I forgot to mention that, that particular crime you're referring to, and when I referred to a 14-year-old that had a robbery crew, that's the one we caught. One of the crews was the woman who was assaulted in her first day in the city.
So that is a really great question about that prevention side of things. There's a number of different techniques and things to work on to sort of get ahead of this issue. What Chief was in my office this morning talking about is some of the changes to respond to what we've seen, and I'll let him get into the details about when changes occur in terms of emphasis patrols that normally would happen toward the warmer months. We're actually making some changes there to try to respond to exactly what all of us are seeing and experiencing and seeing certainly in our email in terms of the uptick of crime here in our neighborhood. So I'll let the chief deal with that. But some of those underlying issues, we're seeing this all over the city, trying to figure out what is it we need to do. In Belltown, there's a real challenges going on there. Some of you may have heard about. There's a program there called Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion, that gives the police a new tool to get some of the sort of serial sort of offenders that are involved in the drug trade and others a different pathway, because clearly there's 2,800 arrests by the same 54, 57 folks over the course of many years. So arresting the same folks over and over again clearly is not getting it done. So we need a new tool, and that's where LEAD comes in to actually get these folks into different sorts of treatment, things to give them a different path than what they've been on over and over again. Arresting in that particular instance does not seem to be getting it done. I'll let Chief talk about some of these details.
Thank you, General. And that's a great question, because that's one of the biggest issues that we need to deal with as, and when I say we, I'm saying the entire community and our city. The mayor's made it very clear, and he brought in all the department heads and said that crime is not just the police department's problem. That was a huge step in the right direction when he brought that forward to us. Because, as an example, what Deputy Mayor just talked about, picture this: we had 54 individuals that we had arrested. It was actually, we looked at it again, it was over 3,000 times. So the idea that we could arrest our way out of this situation is not, it's not going to work. However, so here's the approach that we're taking. There are serial offenders that we do need to get off the street, and those are the ones that are hurting individuals. We have a whole group of mainly young people that we need to give them some different alternatives, and this is where we need our community to come together and help with that. We've tried a couple of different experiments. We're going to keep throwing things on the wall, and we're going to need help from you all to give us some other ideas. We did the drug market initiative in a couple of areas in the city, and it showed some great promise. That's what we brought in: community members, we brought in social services, we brought in the cops, we brought in the prosecutors. And the idea there was we had a number of low-level drug users that lived in the area, and they were ruining that neighborhood. And so what ended up happening is we ended up getting the neighbors to first talk to these people and say, look, and it was very powerful. We brought in these neighbors and said, I used to babysit you. I used to do, I used to help your family out. I used to do this. We brought in business owners and said, I have a business in this area to try to make this place better. And, and basically they said, we love you, but we can't deal with this any longer. Our message was very blunt from the cops and prosecutors. Basically it was, this community wants to help you. We're ready to arrest you. And we showed them the videos of, want to raise your hand when you see yourself on that video, because we have a case on you right now. And then we brought in social services that says this is how we could help you. That's been a pretty, that's been pretty successful in a couple areas of the city. We're going to continue to try those kinds of experiments. We talked about the leads, that's law enforcement assisted diversion. these are those low-level drug users that truly what they need is we got to get them in services, by a carrot or a stick. So at the point of arrest, instead of taking a lot of resources and time, officers' time, jail time, prosecutors' time, is you get a choice. Do you want to go into services right now, or do you want to go for that route? And that's another area that we're trying to work on. We got to try some different innovative processes because, as I said, 54 individuals and over 3,000 arrests, that's not going to do it. So what we are focusing on is in two areas. We're focusing on places, and we're focusing on the most serious offenders, and that seems to be the best thing that's working. That being said, it looks like we got some more people. Do you want to go with this? Sure.